everyone. Welcome back to Classic Comics. So, it's been no secret that mainstream comics have taken a heavily left wing slant in their storytelling over the last several years, and really longer than that, but the last 6 or 7 years have just been ridiculous. And this left wing shift has been accompanied by a pretty steady degradation in comic book sales.
It's not about money. It's about sending a message.
And there have been plenty of people who've argued that the comic book industry needs to allow more political diversity, more diversity of opinion, if you will, in order for sales to have a chance of recovery. But these arguments have fallen on deaf ears for years now. Comic publishers have never given any indication that they would even consider such a thing, which made it very interesting to see this article at CBR.com, which amounts to a tacit admission that yeah, comics are too left wing, and there needs to be a change in how comics are written for the good of the comic book industry. But I have to ask, is it even feasible to save the comic book industry at this point, or is it just too little too late? Well, let's see what this article has to say here. Why Marvel and DC Comics need to bring back political diversity. Ever since the golden age of comics, the medium has explored the philosophies and beliefs of its superheroes. However, as the decades have progressed, the discussion of their competing beliefs have become muted. Marvel and DC could benefit from taking a deeper and more diverse look at their heroes. The comic book medium was always a way for writers to examine humanity through the various superheroes created for fans. Both Superman and Captain America had some classic adventures during World War II, and politics, albeit at a basic level, was always part of their stories. In fact, these heroes became national symbols of patriotism and Americana, thanks to their tendency to adopt popular causes of each era. While the ethic of some of these heroes has changed, for example, Superman's shift to political neutrality, others have maintained their beliefs throughout comic history. However, the modern age of comics has made the mistake of assigning most heroes the same safe politics, despite their histories that reflect very different beliefs. Yeah, no kidding. Politics have been ingrained in comics since the first books were printed, though superhero politics have often been more topical than philosophical. Everything from Batman battling a rogue communist assassin to save Ronald Reagan, to Superboy giving PSA style speeches in favor of inclusion, are examples of this. Famously, the X Men came to serve as an allegory for civil rights in the 60s and onward. Even as these heroes were united by fighting for justice, fierce disagreements about ethics, tactics, and daily politics raged on between figures such as Dictos, Hawk, and Dove. In a move not likely to be seen today, Stan Lee once even asked readers to voice their opinion on whether he should cut down on politics and comics or continue full steam ahead. Now, modern stories like the DC Universe Decisions miniseries in 2008 attempted to settle the question of how each superhero might vote by introducing four political candidates. The choices were between a left wing progressive, two more centrist candidates, and a staunch conservative. Many heroes voted exactly the way fans would expect, and even Lois Lane voiced her opinions, coming across as surprisingly conservative in the process. Green Lanterns were mostly on the right end of the political spectrum, and the then current crop of younger heroes leaned more towards the left. Despite its potentially tense topic, the series was actually surprisingly amicable and lighthearted, showing that fairly convincing political discussions are possible in superhero comics. Fans even got a good old fashioned Green Arrow Green Lantern fight and reconciliation thrown in for good measure. Interestingly, the series was penned by Bill Willingham, an avowed conservative, and Judd Winnick, a liberal. While the story wasn't a big hit with fans, it was hard for anyone to accuse it of overt political bias. Yeah, I remember this coming out, at, and at the time I skipped it. I didn't buy this because I noticed a significant leftward shift in comics after 9/11, right? And so I was starting to really kind of become disillusioned with comics by this point already anyway. So when they put this thing out, I pretty much just assumed this thing's going to be way left wing, and all the conservative heroes will be made to look like jerks or look stupid or whatever. So I didn't even bother buying it. Now, what they're saying here, I mean, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have taken a look at it. And maybe I'll hunt that down and give it a look. Oh, we'll see. Superhero comics started feeling more diverse in the Bronze Age. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, heroes like Blade, Storm, Black Lightning, Luke Cage, and John Stewart were created to better reflect America and the world. This era was also notable for including several comics that overtly explored the politics of superheroes. No book did this as memorably as Green Lantern Green Arrow, which touched on topics like drug addiction, bigotry, and social neglect. Here, Green Arrow served as the socially conscious left wing hero to Green Lantern's more stoic conservative archetypal space cop. This created an interesting dynamic where Oliver Queen represented the moral conscience of superheroes, while Hal was a more traditional by the book superhero. In the modern era, comics still touch on politics, but the topic has become increasingly homogenous to the point where it's a dull and predictable subject. Virtually all heroes, inasmuch as they voice their beliefs, seem to mostly agree, even where their histories should suggest otherwise. Thankfully, most comics don't address real world hot button politics much and focus on stopping villains like Joker and Green Goblin. However, virtually all superheroes have become fairly muted and safe. Rather than heroes like Wally West or Green Arrow forcing the Justice League into arguments, it's hard to find vocal popular characters with consistent philosophies. Of course, this is partially a problem of superhero longevity, since Spider Man and Batman have spent decades neither aging nor evolving, so they rarely get the chance to engage with contemporary politics in meaningful ways. Stan Lee used to describe Marvel Comics as the world outside your window. He wanted his heroes to have relatable, even mundane problems. The fact that the Fantastic Four didn't originally wear costumes shows how committed Lee was to the idea of everyday heroes, though the fact that they lived in a high rise that they owned quickly showed the contradictions in his vision. He also worked alongside conservatives like impassioned objectivist Steve Ditko, though it's worth mentioning that Ditko had trouble getting along with Lee and most other comics creators. As recently as Jeff Johns' JSA, there was an earnest attempt to capture the genuine and believable differences between heroes like the staunch feminist Wonder Woman and the society's most abrasive conservative Wildcat. It wasn't a perfect conversation, of course, and it's not surprising that neither side came across looking great, and that the less popular Wildcat felt like the philosophical loser here. What really matters, though, is they had conversations. Politics help define personality better than almost any other feature. There's a key difference between a character's political party and their underlying philosophy. Marvel and DC's worlds are entirely distinct from our own, and this makes discussions of real world politics and their realities far less compelling. Political philosophy, on the other hand, is about defining heroes' core beliefs and motivations in ways that can speak to readers without dividing them. Heroic pairings like Batman and Superman, Iron Man and Captain America, and Green Lantern and Green Arrow are well established as philosophical foils for each other. Where one hero typically leans towards the scale of liberty, the others usually favor security. The same is selected in their temperaments and personalities. This has been showcased in stories like Tower of Babel, Civil War, and DC Universe Decisions. Famous arguments in comics like the Avengers butting heads with affirmative action over Sam Wilson or the numerous arguments between Hal and Oliver Queen show how comics haven't always succeeded when they've engaged with contemporary politics. However, these discussions also spice things up by reminding readers that the Avengers and the Justice League aren't perfect. They're comprised of unique individuals who contend with relatable problems. Fans could see that most issues weren't so cut and dry that superheroes would never argue about them. Comics aren't a good platform for escalating political arguments or even particularly good places for promoting any specific political theory since they can devolve into propaganda without warning. However, superheroes are more interesting when they have strong opinions. While heroes like Superman and Spider Man have mostly become unifying neutral figures, it's also good to know that heroes can have deep personal philosophies. Okay, so, I agree with most of that, and it is interesting. But does this really signal that comics are going to change? I doubt it, but who knows? Maybe this reflects how people running mainstream comics are thinking now. Maybe they really do realize that things need to change. Maybe they finally are starting to see the cliff that's ahead of them. But more likely, we'll just get more of the same. And if they even do feel a need to course correct, you shouldn't think for an instant that things will actually go back to the way they used to be. And not even a decade ago, never mind 20 or 30 years ago. And honestly, I think it's probably just too late. I think they've alienated too many readers, chased away too many buyers, and the drop in readership is past the point of no return. Because the prices have gotten too high, the art is too boring, the stories are too derivative. All they do now is just rehash old storylines that have already been rehashed multiple times, or pump out bloated crossover events that nobody really wants. And if they do start trying to appeal to a wider audience, it will probably just amount to the occasional limited series that appeals to older readers. There won't be any significant wholesale change. If that does happen, I'm not going to tell you you should start buying DC or Marvel again, or tell you not to buy them. I would just tell you this.
They need you right now. When they don't, they'll cast you out. Like a leper.
Now, do you think the comic book industry is changing? Will they start doing more to appeal to non leftist readers? Will comics improve? Or will we just get more of the same? And is it already too late? Let me know in the comments. And please do like this video before you leave. Also, please sub to the channel and check out some of my other videos. And thanks for watching.